We're going to talk about the details of actually implementing our GEO framework to increase your AI visibility.
A lot of people think that AI rank tracking is interesting and seeing what they're showing up for, but then their mind always goes to the same thing. What do I do next? Like, what content do I produce? How do I improve the AI visibility? We thought it was very important to actually separate this out so that you know what channels that you want to improve. We wanted to really prioritize getting shown as a brand mention in the product. And I'm going to walk through now how we think of this. The first step would be creating pages on their own website that are specific to this. Why would you run a broad scale PR campaign or a broad scale Reddit campaign if you knew exactly what pages the LLMs were pulling from to display an answer? You could actually just do it for really targeted pages. So we can see here, it's actually pulling answers from this thread. So instead of having a broad scale campaign, just do really targeted marketing at these threads that the LLMs are already pulling from.
Welcome to the Grow and Convert Marketing Show. Today, we're going to talk about the details of actually implementing our GEO framework to increase your AI visibility. We have a previous video. If you haven't watched it, you can still watch this one and watch that later, or start it there first. It's called Prioritized GEO. You can also find that article on our website at growandconvert.com. But Benji, you did a demo of our AI visibility tool tracker, and recently to an actual customer or prospect. And it was a great example that kind of had all the elements of how to actually take the framework of prioritized GEO that we've already talked about, where it has these tiers of things that affect your AI visibility and what we're doing for our clients, and via tracker that actually showed the topics and the prompts that they are and they aren't showing up for in ChatGPT, Google AI overviews. It kind of brought that to life of like, okay, here's some actual results, and therefore here are the actions you should take based on our framework. Like, what's the actual tactical things? Like, what do we publish? Where do we publish? Do we do citation outreach and PR? And so we thought this would be a really good, actionable episode to talk through that.
Yeah. So I think last week I probably did 5 or so demos, and I kept getting the same questions over again. So I think a lot of people think that AI rank tracking is interesting and seeing what they're showing up for, but then their mind always goes to the same thing. So what do I do next? Like, what content do I produce? How do I improve the AI visibility? And so I just wanted to do this video to explain what I'm telling people on the calls and how we're thinking about using Tracker to inform our own AI visibility strategy for clients and for ourselves. So I'm just going to pull up this screen share here. So this is the person that did the demo. This is the Tracker account that we set up. I'll just give a high level overview of how Tracker works and some of the differentiators. And then I will come back and explain how we're doing the visibility. So a few key things just in terms of how we built Tracker a little bit differently than a lot of the other products out there. So the biggest thing, and I think the biggest thing that people came in saying they wanted our product for, was a lot of people had challenges with the accuracy of the results. And this was something that we actually experienced with Tracker.
The accuracy of the results in other AI tracking tools, you mean?
Yep, exactly. And so in the email, when we announced this to our list, we had said that the data accuracy is really strong. And that's because we built the product in a different way than a lot of the other tools approached it. A lot of the other tools approached doing visibility through the API. So they used an API to run these searches. And we had initially done that in the first product. And what we found was that when you ran these searches using the API and then someone from the company ran these searches on the side, that they were actually seeing two different things. The tool was saying that they were showing up for certain queries. And then when people were running these searches in their browser themselves, they were seeing completely different results. And so when we rebuilt it, we wanted to solve for that problem. And so what we did is we're actually scraping the data. So we're running these searches in a logged out browser to mimic how someone would actually do this in person. And then we're taking screenshots of that and bringing that in. I can just show that here really quickly. So you can see in the tool, this is the screenshot that is being taken. So when we're actually running the search, we take a screenshot, and then the data is being brought in down here. And you can see we're highlighting the client's organization when they show up. And we're also showing where in this list they show up as well.
I should say, like, I don't know if folks are following us through this show on your podcast feed or YouTube and you're not on our email list, you may not know this. So just as a background, when Benji says the first version, we have completely rebuilt Tracker. So internally, we're calling it Tracker 2.0. It's the same. But if you watched our previous video or podcast episode when we introduced Tracker months ago in the summer, 5 months ago, that was a very different product. And even that one used the API. And for those of you that are curious, like, how does that work? And why is Benji saying the API is different? Just like a quick semi-technical background is API that these LLMs use, like OpenAI's API, is like the way I got it explained to me really nicely by a developer is that's like raw access to the underlying GPT model that powers ChatGPT. But the web product that we're all used to using in your browser or in the app on your phone that's called ChatGPT, it takes that model, but it has all of this training of that model to create a public facing chat product called ChatGPT. So it's like the API is like a raw access to that model, but ChatGPT has what's called like system prompts, which is OpenAI's team kind of training it to respond in certain ways and whatever to like, be useful to a billion humans that use it. And so when you are checking your AI visibility via the API, you get really different answers. Not like you're asking, list the best content marketing agencies and the API gives one list and ChatGPT gives another list. That's true. But what we were noticing is the API would just answer the question in a different way. You would type like content marketing agency or best content marketing agency, and the API, for example, may just like discuss the idea of content marketing agencies. And then you type it into your web browser in actual chat GPT, and it would be like, here are the top 5 agencies. And we were like, whoa, whoa, whoa. This is just like not helpful at all. And so that's why we ended up, we're now going in, opening browsers and doing all that in the back end when we're running these searches. We're like web scraping, and that was really hard to do. And it took months to pull off, but that's kind of the background.
Yeah, thanks for that. And then going back into here, so another big thing is you'll notice in a lot of the other visibility tools, let's say Profound, Peak, they use some sort of blended visibility score. And I think that's largely because if it wasn't blended, what we're seeing across almost every client is that the ChatGPT visibility percentage is much smaller than Perplexity and AI overviews. Just because they have a completely different algorithm to answer questions and prompts. And so they're just blending it together to give you one score so that your visibility seems higher than it actually is. We thought it was very important to actually separate this out so that you know what channels that you want to improve. And I will explain this a little bit more in a second, but essentially if you dig into any of these, you can kind of see this just in how this is looking at the citations for this query. Look at how many more ChatGPT has. So they pull from 26 different sources here to answer this question versus Perplexity. Perplexity has 8. Google AI Overviews has 13. So yeah, you can see it's over double the other platforms. And I think that's one of the reasons it's much harder to show up here is because you need mentions across a lot of these different sources, as opposed to maybe just needing mentions across fewer in some of these other platforms. And I'll go into this in a second when we're talking about how to actually improve this and how we're actually thinking about the strategy of this. But that was a big differentiator, is just showing the visibility by channel and making that really visible in the product instead of trying to hide it and having some drop down to see the visibility by channel. Another key thing was just distinguishing brand mentions versus citations. We thought it's really important to distinguish these two things because to us, a brand mention is really the only thing that's important in terms of reporting to the client. We'll talk about how to use the citations in a little bit to inform strategy. But yeah, just as ranking in Google, if you were ranking in those top 3 positions, it's going to be really beneficial for your brand and your company. Getting a brand mention is the equivalent of that. It's when you're asking for what are the best software options for designing steel connections for bridges. It actually lists your product name in the answers here. That is the most important thing, is that your company shows up here, because it's very rare that someone is going to go into ChatGPT, then go through each of the different articles on the side and go to the site and read all the articles that way. I think people are using AI and ChatGPT largely for quick answers. And so if you're not showing up in that quick response, it's very unlikely that the prospect is going to go into each of the citations and read those articles. So we wanted to really prioritize getting shown as a brand mention in the product.
So if I can kind of add some commentary, like
Yep.
the two things you just said, just to distill it down, be careful. Look, like you don't have to use Tracker, but we genuinely think we've built it very thoughtfully to be as actionable as possible, because we're not like random tech bros that are trying to like release a product because AI is hot. We're literally doing this because we have 20 clients who are saying SEO is great, guys. We appreciate the rankings. Also, can we rank on LLMs and AI visibility? So this is like our day job as well. And so we built it to sort of be as actionable and real as possible from our perspective as actual practitioners. But whatever tool you use, be careful of the two things that Benji just said. Number one, if it's giving you a single blended visibility score, even if you can dig in and click around to the tool and find other things, if the main thing the tool shows you when you open it up is a single blended visibility score and a graph there, just be careful that it's not making you not think about the two things Benji thought about. Number one, what AI platform is that visibility score being dominated by? If you bring it back up, well, we can't probably show all of our clients' visibilities, so maybe don't do that. But I can tell you that client after client, ChatGPT has much lower visibility than Perplexity and AI overviews, and you can talk about why that is. But like that's important, and that's what Benji's saying is like that leads to actionable stuff. Whereas if you just have a single number, 35%, and actually it's 55% of prompts you're tracking, you have visibility on Google AI overviews, and 10% only on ChatGPT, you're actually not at 35% visibility on ChatGPT. That's important. And the second thing is that if that percentage of visibility is really just you being in citations 35% of the time, then don't expect leads from AI. Because as Benji said, like how many times when you use ChatGPT are you like opening and scrolling through the 26 citations and clicking into the websites? I almost never do it. Some people do. You'll see that as source referral traffic from ChatGPT. It's not zero, but a brand mention is worth, in my mind, like 10, 50, 100x more than a citation. And so just like that's why we built it with these details, because as practitioners, that stuff matters to our clients. If our clients are saying, I'm not getting leads from ChatGPT, it like matters whether it's just, oh, your citation number 17, or it's literally listing your brand to the user and saying, like, here is a really good XYZ type of software or agency or whatever.
Yeah, so now I want to get into the how to a little bit. So, yeah, when people see this, they're like, great. This is really interesting. I can see by topic. And this is another key thing that we improved from version 1. Version 1 was more keyword oriented. This one is more topic oriented. And so essentially the way to think of this is a high level topic. It could also be somewhat of a keyword. And then what the tool is doing is it's coming up with questions around this topic area that would be relevant for a prospect to actually enter into a chat. And then there's no real, I would say, science behind this. A lot of the other tools, as well as ours, are kind of doing our best guesswork at guessing what questions people are asking around this topic area. But this is informed by the onboarding process. So you in the very beginning, you give it information about the product and the service and who the customers are, and that's how it's coming up with these questions. The way that we're thinking about this is then if you're showing up for a lot of these different questions with branded responses, then you have a pretty good probability of showing up for a lot of different questions around this topic area. And so that's kind of how we're thinking of this.
And this also is in contrast to what we were disappointed with when we looked at other tools. Again, because our clients were like, hey, like we want to track this, and we looked at other tools, is everyone is guessing the prompts. Just an FYI, if you start using these other AI visibility tools and here they're like, here are the prompts you're ranking for. They don't actually know. It's just a guess. Nobody has the Google Search Console of ChatGPT. And then when you actually ask people how do they use ChatGPT, which we've done to our clients that have found us on ChatGPT, we've said, can you literally share the chat? It's not reproducible. They're not typing in, opening ChatGPT in a single new chat and saying, best content marketing agency, enter. They're having a long conversation about their business. And along the way, the concept of delegating content marketing naturally comes up. And so that's not reproducible. And so our take is, we don't actually know in the AI world exactly how the user is going to ask about such and such product type that is your product type. You don't know the exact phrasing. That's very different from the traditional Google SEO, where you're like, here's the search volume for this exact term or whatever. And so our thing is, none of us know, including us, including these other tools. So instead, what we can say is what Benji just said. Let's do it on a topic basis. So the top one, best structural design software, is important for this company who sells structural design software. We don't know exactly how the user is going to ask, but we can ask about it in 4 or 5 different ways. And by the way, you see an add prompt button. If something's really important to you, you want to ask in certain ways, you can add 10. It doesn't matter. You can add however many you want. And then you say, if we're asking in 5 different ways about best structural design software, and you're not mentioned, in this case, this brand is not mentioned by ChatGPT even once in any of those phrasings, chances are, however an actual user asks about best structural design software, you're not going to be mentioned, versus this other one that you're showing on the screen now, steel connection calculation software. If they have 100%, we asked 5 different ways, every single time their brand was mentioned on Perplexity, every single time their brand was mentioned on Google AI overviews, and 60% of the time it was mentioned on ChatGPT. So they're probably good to go. Again, thinking of Tracker as actionable as possible, this is not the place where they need to be doing a bunch of work and producing content, because it looks like 60 to 100% of the time, no matter how you phrase the question, you're being mentioned. So you're probably going to be mentioned whenever a user actually asks about it. That's the thinking behind this topic grouping.
Yeah. So I thought this was a really good example to show people, because the person who I did the demo with had been following us for a long time, had taken our course, so had implemented a lot of our thinking just in terms of going after pain point SEO style keywords. And he had produced a lot of content. And as you can see, just out of the box, without really doing any AI visibility work, they're already doing a very decent job of showing up for a lot of the different terms that are very important to the business. So his next question on the call was just, okay, yeah, this is great. Now, what do I do to actually improve visibility? Let's say for best structural design software and this BIM-enabled structural design tools. So it was interesting. As I probed him and I started asking some questions around what kind of content he had on his site, he said, yeah, they had a ton of content on steel connection calculation, on connection design software for engineers, because these are kind of the most important specific keywords for their business. And they didn't have as much content around just best structural design software and BIM-enabled structural design tools. And so if we just now think back to the last video, or if you haven't read Prioritize GEO, that is something I would read. And Davish, I don't know if you have that up and you want to share maybe the pyramid really quick, but I think that helps set the context for how we think about this, and then go into the details on what we would actually recommend to people.
Yeah, so quick overview. Our strategy represented in our GEO pyramid says the foundation of your visibility is from these 2 things. Tier 1, the bottom foundation, is owned content. And the way that gets you visibility is by it exposes you to the LLMs when the LLMs use web search to supplement their answers and decide on their answers. In LLM terminology, it's called grounding. They're grounding their answer in reality via this data source, which is like Googling. That's what they, whenever you type something in ChatGPT and it says searching for this, searching the web for that, it's grounding. That's how your best bet to influence the LLM's answer is showing up there, because the alternative is showing up in training data, and that's very opaque. It's hard to do. We don't know how often they updated it. There's two ways to then show up when the LLMs are searching the web to supplement their answer or ground their answer. You can show up with your own content on your site, or tier two, you can show up on other people's content that they might discover when the LLMs Google stuff and your brand is mentioned in their content. Why do we have tier one as more foundational, the foundation of the pyramid over tier two? We go into that in the article, but in short, it's because you have more space in your own content to explain the details of your positioning and your product so that the LLMs understand the context and it knows when to mention you, because the user that it's chatting with it has some specific pain point and it's read your thing and it's like, oh, like this is the type of product that would be good for them. Whereas offsite mentions, you have only a short, like you can kind of have maybe a couple sentences or sometimes just your brand name. And the other thing is, like, you just control this. Like offsite mentions, if you're doing all this work on Reddit and then ChatGPT a month or two ago, the amount of sources that it pulled from Reddit dropped drastically, you're like kind of screwed. Whereas in your own content, that risk is lower. And so I go into more reasons, but that's the foundation. And then tier three, ironically, is what we are feeling everyone online is talking about, but we think it's the least important thing, which is like these on-site tactics and content tweaks. Like add these bullet points to summarize your content, try LLMs.txt, which has been proven by many people, including our own studies, to not really do anything. And all of these like FAQs and reword your headers as questions. That's all just like tactical stuff whose aim is to get LLMs to better understand your content. We think that's not as important. They're literally LLMs. The whole point is that they can understand English language really well. So instead, expose yourself to them when they are searching their web to answer the user's query. That's your number one way of influencing them. And we think the place to start, the foundation, is make sure you have content on your site that shows up for the topic areas that are important to you, which I think is a good transition back to this example that you're walking through.
Yes, that helps set the stage for now what to actually do. So yeah, now going back to this, one feature that we built into the product is this thing that says improve visibility here. We did this to help the product be actionable in terms of what steps can you take to improve visibility. And I'm going to walk through now how we think of this. So to set the stage, the tier one part, this is meant to help you do that. So if you don't have content on your site around this topic area, so if you haven't ever written a post, content connection design software for engineers, that would be something that we recommend doing first. So produce a post on that, rank for it, and then these are some of the questions that you may be able to include in that blog post to help you show up for visibility around these prompts. And then here you can see, okay, why the question that the guy had on the phone was, why are we showing up so much more for connection design software versus best structural design software? So quickly, the answer is they just didn't have content on their site around this topic area. And then I want to show you something when we go into the improve visibility for each of the different topics, and that'll really bring to light what the areas of opportunity that the company can do to help improve this. So if we go into this, you'll see here, most popular brands and sources. So what the tool is actually doing is it's reading all the prompts on that topic, and then it's showing a list of all the brands that are mentioned around this topic area. And you can see the idea statica here is all the way down the list, I think in the middle. So, I mean, they're not doing a bad job at all, but they have 4 mentions across all the different citations in this topic area. And then you can also see here that they have 2 different cited sources from their website around this topic area. And now I want to go back to this other one and just show the difference, and then I'll explain what you can do. So you can see for connection design software, they're actually the most mentioned brand out of all of these different brands. So they have 20 different mentions across all the cited sources, and they have the second highest cited domain for this topic area. And so just if we look at this visibility, that is the reason that they're showing up more for this topic area than this one, because they have a bunch of pages on their site that the LLMs are pulling as sources of information to display an answer. And on top of that, they're also being mentioned by other sites more than any other brand, which is why that they have really strong visibility in this topic area. So what I would do with this information is, to me, this is an area of opportunity. Another thing that you can see down here is which of the articles or pages are cited by LLMs more than any other pages. The first step would be creating pages on their own website that are specific to this. So if they don't have a page that goes after the keyword best structural design software for traditional SEO, that is something that I would recommend doing. And then do traditional link building to try to get that page to rank. And that should help you get this page cited as one of the sources here. Now, what else can you do to help improve visibility? So we've been testing something called citation outreach, and this is how we're using the tool to help us inform where to do this outreach to. So for this topic area, these are the most cited sources, and you can kind of see all these different pages. So there's YouTube in here, there's Reddit, but more often than not, it's actually industry specific sites. So these are some competitor sites or some content-based sites in their industry. And some of those sites mention the brand name, Idea Statica. So what we're actually doing beyond producing content around this topic area is we're running outreach campaigns to some of these sites, asking if they can include this company as a potential company to recommend around this topic area. So for example, Top Bridge Design Software, if that post doesn't include Idea Statica, you could do an outreach campaign asking if they would include them. And then a lot of people have heard about doing these broad scale Reddit campaigns or just broad scale PR, and that's really what's going to help your visibility. But in our point of view, why would you run a broad scale PR campaign or a broad scale Reddit campaign if you knew exactly what pages the LLMs were pulling from to display an answer? So instead of doing some broad scale Reddit campaign where you're paying some agency or you're paying someone on your team to go in a bunch of Reddit threads and answer a bunch of questions, you could actually just do it for really targeted pages. So we can see here, if we pull this up, that it's actually pulling answers from this thread. So instead of having a broad scale campaign, just do really targeted marketing at these threads that the LLMs are already pulling from.
And by the way, this is why we think this topic level thinking of your AI visibility is so important and actionable. Like, this is another reason. Like I said, the first reason earlier was because none of us know what prompts people are actually entering. And so at least you're saying, do we have visibility on this topic area if we ask about it 4 or 5 different ways? But the other thing is that, like, you should actually be thinking of your GEO and AI visibility in a topic basis, because that, like, thinking of it as a holistic thing is kind of nonsensical. It's kind of like an SEO. People would be like, sometimes we get on calls with clients and they're like, we're like, what have you done SEO wise? And they're like, like, I bought some links, like we've been doing some link building, or they'll use phrasing like, our SEO, like it used to be really good, but it's not good anymore. And as an actual like SEO practitioner, you're like, what does that mean? What rankings? Like, tell me what rankings you had. It's like just talking about SEO in the abstract. Similarly here, when you're just like, we have good AI visibility. You're like, for what terms? And similarly here, like for topics, this is right, is just doing Reddit marketing to be mentioned on Reddit in a general sense is kind of so random. Instead, it's, we want to be on this thread because we're literally seeing it be cited for a topic that we care about, and we asked about that topic 5 different ways. And this one Reddit thread was cited 4 times across 3 LLMs and 5 different prompts. That's how it becomes actionable. And then last thing I'll say, I'll give it back to you, is we're going to have a separate video. What Benji is saying about, like, when you actually look at the citations, which we are doing, you start to see really specific trends, and most of them are very specific industry specific stuff that are being cited. We have a separate study that's about to come out that we'll do a video on, where we're looking at, we actually analyze this across, I think it was something like, I don't know, 5, 10 clients. It was something like 40 prompts and 2,000, no, 2,000 prompts and 40 topics, or some crazy number. Don't hold me to that. And we looked at it and tabulated how many industry specific sites, whatever are. We'll have a separate video looking at those results.
Yeah, so now going back to this, again, I think that's the most important way that you can use this tool, is to help with that second tier, is now that we know all these really specific pages that the LMs are pulling from. So again, this is not the only Reddit thread. There's one here, there's a couple down here. So just go run targeted campaigns in those. Get your customers or get employees to go answer these questions, and that can help your visibility. And then run targeted outreach to all these different sites. So Autodesk, Bentley, like there's all these specific pages where they're doing comparisons, or these are list posts that you could get added to. The more mentions that you have here, the more likely you are to show up visibility wise. So again, what can you do? You can go create pages on your site as a step one, and potentially not only create a best structural design page, but think of all the questions people would ask around that topic and create specific pages around those. Create case studies around how people are using your product to help with those things. Because if you think about how a user is going to go type something in, they're going to say, hey, I'm a structural design engineer. I'm looking for a product that does X, Y, Z. Show me a list of the best ones. And if you have case studies that kind of have that persona in there and show how that person is solving a problem, you're going to be way more likely to show up in these tools having that detail and the specificity in the blog post than just only a list post. And so I would say that's kind of how you can use the tool to help inform thinking, is if you don't have content on your site in this topic area and you have low visibility, create some content as step one. Then step two is then use the tool to then come in and see these citations and see where you can run these very targeted campaigns. And so the way that I like to think of this is it's very analogous to link building in the SEO side. In traditional SEO, you're creating a page, you're building links to that page to show Google that this page is relevant. Now, the pages don't matter. Like, I think in traditional SEO, it's more about getting high domain authority sites to link back to you. In here, it's about figuring out what these high authority pages are that the LLMs are already pulling from. And instead of getting links, not only do you need your site mentioned, so it's not only just saying Auto Statica is the best, Idea Statica, sorry. I just wanted to double check there because I had a feeling I was getting the name wrong. But it's not only saying Idea Statica is the best, but what the LLM is doing is it's looking across all these sites and it's seeing how other sites are communicating this business. And then it's kind of taking a summary of all those sites and rehashing it back to the user who's searching for this. So what's also important here is how your company is positioned across all of these different sites. And so that's why we're actually using an agency to help us with this. But our job as Grow and Convert is to then look at how the company is positioned and make sure that all the key value props and the way that we would communicate this business to a prospect is in the actual page. So not only is it important to get the company included in, let's say, this list post, but it's important how the company is communicated, because how the company is communicated across all these different sites is essentially going to influence how the LLM describes the business. And so even if it said Idea Statica is one of the companies that you want to use, but then it had some bad information around, let's say, who it's best for or what the key features were, still not going to be that helpful for your business. So it's important to do both. Any other things that you would add here?
Yeah, so a couple things there. You said we're working with a company. We're providing this as a service to our clients. We've partnered with what we're calling a citation outreach company. That's basically the AI equivalent of link building. The other thing I'll say is, like, it goes back to this kind of tiered system in our pyramid. And there's a simple way to think about it. If you're not even showing up, if you don't have content and you haven't even done SEO and you haven't done the SEO fundamentals, you're not showing up, like, frankly, what are you doing thinking about GEO? Like, what's your strategy? Like, I'm open to it. People can reply in the comments or email and say, "Here, I have this strategy that's GEO only without SEO." But again, in our understanding of how these LLMs work, what are you doing? You have some inside track to influence the training data of these models, and you have no SEO visibility, but you're like all over ChatGPT. If so, please email us and tell us how you're doing it. But that's not my understanding of how it works. So just like there are some people that are like, I want to be mentioned by ChatGPT. Yeah, these things read content.
Like one way you could do that is essentially run these outreach campaigns across all these sites and get your brand mentioned. I think
That's
that's what a
true.
lot of people are doing. But the downside of that, and what we're seeing across all of our clients' tracker data, is our SEO content around these topics are being used as sources or like cited sources
Yes.
as like the number 1 through 5 sources
Yes.
more often than not. And so it is way more valuable for you to be able to control your own narrative in your blog post around how you want to communicate the value of your own business and then do the outreach to layer on top of that instead of the inverse. Yes, you can probably affect visibility just by doing this outreach or getting your site
You're right.
mentioned across a bunch of different sites, but it's really important to use your own content as the foundation for that.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. The answer to my own question is the way you can influence and get just GEO visibility without much SEO is to just do the outreach. Some people call it digital PR or whatever. And if you're mentioned in every other source that is showing up when these LLMs are searching for a particular topic area and you don't have your own content, you're right. You'll probably get mentioned. As a preview of this other video we will do on who these sources are and how many of these sources the LLMs are citing are these like general websites like Reddit and Wikipedia versus industry specific. We also analyze, Benji, exactly what you just said, which is how often in the prompts and the results we analyzed were our own clients' content mentioned. And the number is 88% of product specific, like bottom of funnel prompts or topics. So just like for Idea Statica, whatever construction software was like kind of their bottom of funnel term, it was like 88% of the time for the clients that we analyze, like our existing clients, this construction company is not our client. Their own content was one of the top domains cited, right? And then the other thing, so that's one thing. Two more things I wanted to add to what you're saying. This whole idea of looking and seeing what articles and Reddit threads or whatever these LLMs are actually citing and doing targeted outreach to them. This is another reason why it's important to have scraped web results instead of the API. The API results have very, very different sources cited. So if you're trying to get cited on the API results, that's better than nothing. It's better than nothing. There's going to be some overlap with the web results, but the web results are more accurate.
One more thing that I want to cover here is just doing this outreach. So again, there's a lot of people that are talking about doing digital PR campaigns and doing Reddit strategies and just all these ways that you can get mentioned. We've always taken the approach of being way more targeted than doing the shotgun approach to everything. So there's a lot of people who in the SEO world will do just broad scale link building to their homepage. We've tested that and we found that building links to specific articles is way more impactful to get rankings for those specific pages on your site than doing just broad scale link building to your homepage. And we're bringing that same thinking now to AI, where there's a lot of people that are telling you should go pay tens of thousands of dollars to do broad scale PR, and getting on all these different sites is really going to help affect your visibility. That may be true, but is it really worth spending the tens of thousands of dollars to get on all these sites when you can see with the tool which pages on the web the LLMs are using as sources of information? So instead of doing broad scale PR link or broad scale PR campaigns, why not just go after the pages that are already being cited?
Yeah.
And try to get in those. It's
Yeah.
going to be way more impactful. It's going to be way less costly. And you'll see the results of that effort much more quickly than doing this broad scale campaign. And so I think that kind of sums up just how we're thinking about this differently. We're thinking about a very targeted approach to AI visibility instead of just all this general advice that's being published on LinkedIn and on Twitter and from other agencies about just all these ideas that you should do. It's like, no, create content on your most valuable topic areas. Equivalent would be keywords in the SEO world. Same kind of thinking. What are those most high intent terms for your business? focus on those first. Even when it comes to producing content or doing this outreach, focus on the keywords first. Like for us, it's gonna be way more impactful to create a bunch of blog posts on best content marketing agencies, best SaaS content marketing agencies, creating case studies around that, doing visibility campaigns around those keywords, than it is going to be doing this kind of work around just.
Broad brush digital PR where we want anyone and any source and any website to mention us. Actually, that's a perfect segue. I wrote down two things that I wanted to also mention. I'm realizing that this was kind of implied in what you're saying, but not everyone who watches these videos has seen everything we've published before, whether it be videos or articles. So I wanted to talk about two more important parts to like actionable GEO strategy underneath what Benji has been saying. And you just touched on it. You said be targeted in the topics like we want to rank for SaaS content marketing agency or whatever. So the two things I wrote down as like core GEO strategy stuff is number one, you pick your topics. And number two, bottom of funnel topics are really the ones you should pick and the only ones that matter. So what Benji's saying, and that's kind of underneath that, and you could see that if you rewind in the video and look at the topics that you just showed for this engineering company, they're all extremely bottom of funnel. This and that construction software, this connection software. It was like industry specific, BIM or BIN. I don't even know what that means, or whatever type of software. It's something that's specific to them. Let me start with the first thing I said. You pick your topics. What do I mean and why is that important? What these other AI tools that we've experimented with tend to nudge and push the user towards, when you just, what their UX naturally pushes you towards is telling you what prompts you happen to be ranking for. And what it does, like what we've tested is we put in growandconvert.com, we try one of these other tools, and it'll be like, here are like 10 random prompts that we think you're mentioned on. And it's just like, it'll be some random specific prompt on this topic and a random specific prompt on that topic. We don't think that's a good way to do GEO strategy. Who knows? They don't know what prompts matter to you. Instead, you need to dictate that from the brand down, top down. You need to sit down with a blank sheet of paper or an open Google Doc with whoever the stakeholders are and say, what topic areas do we care about showing up for? So for Grow and Convert, it's content marketing agency, maybe B2B content marketing agency, best content marketing for GEO. How do I increase my visibility on ChatGPT? Whatever, right? SaaS content marketing agency. But that needs to be dictated like, I'm like kind of in my head, I'm saying top down. The brand, you control that. So like instead of just being like, oh, the AI tool told me that this random prompt that I don't know if anyone will ever put into ChatGPT that we're ranking for it. That's not useful. You dictate your strategy.
I have a good example of that. So maybe a few months back, we got sent a spreadsheet from one of the tools from one of our clients. And they said, hey, we did this competitive analysis on visibility for some of our competitors, and a lot of our competitors are outperforming us. And when we looked at the prompts, this company essentially does tour booking software. Their main market is in Europe. However, they're expanding to the US. And when we looked at a lot of the prompts that the other company was ranking for, it was like top attractions in Minnesota. And so if it like, again, how is top attractions in Minnesota going to help your business if you're a tour booking software business? One, it's going to attract consumers, which is not your customer. Two, it's just not even related to your business at all. Yet the tools were saying your competitor is doing way better from a visibility standpoint because they were just measuring prompts that didn't matter to the business.
And I'll tell you why that happens. Why are they measuring prompts that don't matter? Because they're doing some AI analysis in the background that's just like associating terms randomly together. So they're like, oh, you provide software to vacation and touring and vacation companies. And so it was like, that's kind of related to like top tourist sites in Minnesota. But it doesn't have that understanding that if this other competitor is showing up for top vacation spots in Minnesota, that's not relevant to your customer. Your customer is the tour company, not the person taking a vacation. Like for the marketer, the human behind that, that's so obvious. And if you rely on these tools, you're just going to get some like amalgam of random prompts that AI is just guessing is kind of related to your terms. And you'll be like, oh, our visibility is like 14%. Why isn't it higher? That's not how you should do GEO from a strategy level. You need to decide what topics matter to you. And then that last part of this is those topics should be entirely or heavily skewed to bottom of funnel. What does that mean? Bottom of funnel means topics where the user is asking about products or services in your space or like the one you sell. Why? Because, and we can link to that article in the show notes, but Benji published an article months ago called How AI is going to Change Search that explained top of funnel is being killed by AI, because when you're doing a top of funnel query, some how-to informational intro guide, how does this work? People now just read the AI. In ChatGPT, you just kind of have that interaction with ChatGPT. It explains to you content marketing strategy or something that we used to, we would rank for in Google or whatever. They don't need to click to our Grow and Convert article. They'll just explain it. Right? And so how to do this and how to do that, they just explain it. So that's not useful. What you need to show up for is when the user is asking the LLM, I'm looking for this type of product or this type of service. That's what you should prioritize. That's why when you look in the example that Benji walked through, look at all of those topics. They weren't like general construction or engineering advice, how to do XYZ. It was this type of software, that type of software, that type of software, because those are the only ones where you have a chance of getting a brand mention. And side note, Tracker tells you when you hover over any of these topics for an LLM, how many total brands were mentioned at all. And in fact, we have a really nice update coming at the end of this week or the week after. So probably most of you watching the video, you're going to have it already ready in Tracker, where in that Insight Improved Visibility modal that Benji showed at the top, we're going to have this analysis of the prompts that you put in. How likely are they to mention brands at all? To push you and nudge you to an actionable way of saying you should be only tracking prompts that have some chance of a brand mention probability.
If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe. You can also get the audio-only versions of these shows wherever you get your podcasts. And you can follow us at growandconvert.com/newsletter for any articles and updates for when these videos come out.